My name is Stephanie Kingsley, and I'm about to tell you about the 90 seconds that changed everything between my father and me forever. It wasn't the moment I became a billionaire, or when my company went public, or even when I proved everyone wrong. It was the moment I realized that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who see you the least clearly. Those were the most humiliating 90 seconds of my life. Around the dinner table at an upscale steakhouse in downtown Chicago, my uncle was boasting about his son's recent graduation from Harvard Business School and his coveted offer from McKinsey. My aunt chimed in with pride about my cousin's position in investment banking at Morgan Stanley, detailing her impressive starting salary and the prestige of working on Wall Street deals. Then all eyes turned to me, and I felt the familiar weight of family expectations settling on my shoulders like a heavy coat. "What about Stephanie?" my uncle asked with genuine curiosity. "Stanford's finance program must be wrapping up soon, right?" The silence that followed felt like death itself had entered the room. My father slowly set down his wine glass, and I watched his expression transform from mild interest to something cold and bitter. "Stephanie?" he said with a laugh that contained no humor whatsoever. "She's no longer a Stanford student. She chose to drop out." The conversation around the table died instantly, as if someone had pulled the plug on a radio. "What?" my aunt gasped, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. My father leaned back in his chair, his voice gaining momentum like a train picking up speed. "Yes, we now have a college dropout in the family. She decided she was smarter than Stanford's professors and wanted to pursue some fantasy about technology entrepreneurship." I felt heat rising in my cheeks, but I remained silent. The events of yesterday morning flashed through my mind like lightning, but in this moment, I couldn't find my voice. 3 years of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and achievements that would have seemed impossible to my younger self, all felt meaningless under the weight of his disdain. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to explain, to share what I had actually accomplished, but the look in his eyes told me he had no interest in hearing anything I had to say. "David, please." My mother tried to intervene, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, let everyone know the truth," my father continued, his voice rising with each word until other diners began to turn their heads. "We spent nearly $500,000 to send her to the finest university in the country, and she chose to become a college dropout loser." The words echoed through the restaurant like a slap. I could feel the stares of strangers, could hear the whispered conversations starting at nearby tables. This public humiliation cut deeper than any private argument ever could. I wanted to sink into the floor, to disappear completely, to wake up from what felt like a nightmare. "She thinks she's the next Mark Zuckerberg," he continued with venom. "But the reality is this. She's a 22-year-old failure with no degree, no job, living in some rundown apartment in California, chasing a startup dream that's destined to collapse." My hands trembled beneath the table, but I said nothing. His description of my life was so twisted, so malicious, that it took my breath away. Not because it was accurate, but because it revealed how little he knew about my actual existence. In his mind, I was already a cautionary tale, a child who had thrown away every advantage and opportunity. My uncle cleared his throat uncomfortably, trying to salvage the situation. Perhaps she just needs some time to figure things out. Time? My father stood up abruptly, pointing at me as if I were evidence in a trial. "She needs a reality check. You will never amount to anything." "Do you know that, Stephanie? You're bringing shame to this entire family. Every time my colleagues ask about you, I feel embarrassed to call you my daughter." Those words hit me like physical blows. "Every time my colleagues ask about you, This meant he had been discussing me regularly, consistently presenting me as his disappointment. In his professional circles, I was the failure daughter, the child he had to apologize for. I remembered being 7 years old, how proudly he would introduce me to his friends, calling me his brilliant little girl, predicting I would make the family proud someday. Now I had become his source of shame. My partners all have successful children, he continued, his voice breaking slightly with what sounded like genuine pain. Johnson's daughter is a software engineer at Google. Miller's son is in medical school at Harvard. And me? I have a dropout daughter living in a place I'm too ashamed to mention to anyone. He took a deep breath, preparing for the final blow that would cut deepest of all. Save us some dignity and get out. Maybe when you realize that the real world doesn't care about your innovative ideas, you'll come back, reapply to school, and live like a normal person for once. I slowly rose from my chair, looking around the table at each face. Not one person spoke in my defense. My uncle studied his plate intently. My aunt pretended to organize her napkin. My cousins avoided eye contact entirely. Even my mother, the woman who had always been my strongest supporter, simply shook her head with disappointment, as if asking silently, "Why did you have to do this to us? Why did you have to make us look like fools?" I picked up my purse and walked out of that restaurant without saying a single word. Outside, I stood in the November Chicago wind, breathing the sharp air that cut through my lungs. The physical cold was nothing compared to the emotional freezing I had just experienced. Standing in front of the mansion where I had grown up, I realized for the first time that it had never truly been my home. It was a museum, a showcase for the Kingsley family's achievements, and I was the defective exhibit that had finally been removed from display. I pulled out my phone and looked at an email that had arrived that morning. The subject line made my heart race, but after what had just happened, all excitement felt crushed under the weight of humiliation. I imagined what might have occurred if I had shared this news during dinner. Perhaps my father would have immediately changed his tune. Perhaps he would have apologized for his words. Perhaps the entire evening would have unfolded differently, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was that they had shown me exactly where I stood in this family. I was a conditional daughter, someone worthy of love only when I met their definition of success. I never went back. For the next several days, I stayed at a hotel in downtown San Francisco, refusing to answer calls from home. My mother left several voicemail messages, her voice filled with guilt and pleading. She said my father was just disappointed, that he really loved me, that families should stick together through difficult times. But I knew these words came too late. The damage was irreversible, carved into my memory like words etched in stone. I thought back to the day 3 years earlier when I had left Stanford. I was 22 then, bursting with dreams about the future and passion for technology that felt like fire in my chest. I hadn't told anyone about my decision to leave school and start a company. I simply packed my belongings, said goodbye to my dormitory, left that prestigious campus behind, and drove to Silicon Valley with nothing but determination and a half-formed idea. Back then, I was incredibly naive, believing that good ideas and hard work would naturally lead to success. Reality, of course, was far more complicated. During my first year, I nearly ran out of money completely, surviving on instant ramen and sleeping on the office couch. My first product was a complete failure. Nobody understood what I was trying to create, and nobody believed that a college dropout could build anything of value, but I refused to give up. I'm still not sure what kept me going during those dark months. Maybe it was pure stubbornness, maybe rebellion against my parents' expectations, or maybe some deep inner certainty about my own capabilities. I redesigned the product from scratch, found new investors who shared my vision, and assembled a stronger team of brilliant minds who believed in what we were building. Slowly, things began to improve. During my second year, we secured our first real investment, $5 million in seed funding. The investors came from a well-respected venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, and they weren't just backing my technology, but my vision for the future. They told me I had a rare ability to see market opportunities that others missed, and to translate complex technical concepts into products that ordinary people could understand and use. The third year brought acceleration that surprised everyone, including myself. We completed our Series A funding round, raising $30 million. Then came Series B, bringing in $120 million. Each round became easier than the last, with investors growing more excited about our potential. My company, Horizon Labs, began earning recognition throughout the industry. We developed an artificial intelligence data analysis platform that enterprises adopted at an unprecedented rate, and our revenue growth shocked everyone who followed our progress. Just last month, we completed our Series C funding round with a company valuation of $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion. The number was so large that I struggled to fully comprehend its meaning. I had transformed from a family disappointment into the CEO of a unicorn company. In many ways, I had already proven myself beyond any reasonable doubt. But yesterday morning brought news that elevated everything to an entirely new level. I received an email from Goldman Sachs expressing their interest in serving as the lead underwriter for our initial public offering. An initial public offering would transform Horizon Labs into a publicly traded company, making my success visible to the entire world rather than just industry insiders. The managing director mentioned in his email that they were extremely impressed with our business model and considered this potentially the most important technology IPO of the year. They had assembled a complete team to serve our needs, including their most experienced bankers, most skilled analysts, and their top managing director to personally handle the deal. That managing director's name was David Kingsley. My father. When I saw his name, the entire world seemed to stop moving. Fate sometimes has a twisted sense of humor, delivering the most dramatic plot twists at the most unexpected moments. This wasn't coincidence. This was destiny unfolding with perfect irony. 3 days earlier, David Kingsley had called his daughter a college dropout loser, declaring that she would never amount to anything. Now, this same David Kingsley was about to meet his most important client, a 26-year-old female CEO whose company was valued at $2.5 billion and preparing for what could be the year's largest IPO. And he had no idea that this CEO was his own daughter. I sat in my hotel room, reading that email over and over again, staring at my father's name until the letters blurred. I imagined the moment when he would see me walk into that conference room, the expression that would cross his face when he realized that the failure he had just humiliated was actually the most important client of his career. This was perfect revenge, delivered not through my planning, but as a gift from the universe itself. I didn't immediately respond to Goldman's email. I needed time to process this incredible irony, to decide exactly how to handle such an unprecedented situation. I could easily request a different banker, avoiding any potentially awkward encounter, but I chose not to. This was my ultimate opportunity to prove myself, the perfect moment to show my father exactly how wrong his judgment had been. On Sunday evening, I finally replied to Goldman's email confirming our meeting for Monday morning. I mentioned no personal connections, responding simply as a professional CEO accepting their proposal. I wanted this revelation to unfold at the most dramatic moment, in the most public setting, within the most professional context possible. I spent Sunday night preparing my presentation with meticulous care. I reviewed every company statistic, every achievement, every milestone we had reached. When my father saw me, I wanted him to witness not just his daughter, but an extraordinary businesswoman, a genius he had never taken seriously. Monday morning, I stood in the Goldman Sachs building elevator, watching floor numbers climb steadily upward. Each floor brought me closer to this moment I had been waiting 3 years to experience. I felt no nervousness, only excitement. This wasn't merely a business meeting. This was justice being served with perfect precision. The elevator stopped at the 47th floor, and the doors slowly opened. Goldman's receptionist waited outside with a professional smile. "Ms. Kingsley, it's wonderful to meet you. Our team is waiting in Conference Room A. This represents one of our most important IPO projects this year. I'm confident this will be a mutually beneficial partnership," I replied, my voice steady and confident. We walked across polished marble floors, past floor-to-ceiling windows, and walls covered with awards and accolades. This was the heart of the financial world, where deals worth billions of dollars were negotiated daily. Today, I wasn't the humiliated college dropout from that family dinner. I was their distinguished guest, the person they wanted to impress. The double doors of Conference Room A slowly opened. Inside sat 8 Goldman executives, all wearing dark blue suits, carefully reviewing Horizon Labs materials. At the head of the conference table sat a figure I recognized immediately. He was absorbed in studying financial statements, completely unaware of who was about to enter. David Kingsley, my father. "Good morning, gentlemen." Every head turned toward me. I watched my father's face carefully, observing confusion creep into his features first, then recognition, then complete and utter shock. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers, liquid spilling across documents and creating dark stains on white paper. "I'm Stephanie Kingsley, founder and CEO of Horizon Labs. It's my pleasure to meet all of you." Complete silence filled the conference room. The other Goldman bankers had no idea what was happening. They only saw their lead banker suddenly speechless, looking as though he had encountered a ghost. "Please, have a seat," I continued, in my most professional tone. "We have many important details to discuss." My father finally found his voice. I need a moment." "Of course," I smiled pleasantly. "However, our time is somewhat limited. I know Goldman prides itself on efficiency, so I've prepared a comprehensive presentation." I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector. Everyone watched this strange dynamic, trying to understand why their lead banker appeared so shaken. "Gentlemen, welcome to the world of Horizon Labs." The first slide appeared on the screen. Horizon Labs, revolutionizing AI data analytics. Founded 2021. Current valuation, $2.5 billion. Annual revenue, $420 million. Employees, 285. Goldman's CFO made an impressed sound. "Incredible numbers, Ms. Kingsley." "Thank you. This is only the beginning." I looked directly at my father. "David, I know you've reviewed our financials. What are your initial thoughts?" He opened and closed his mouth several times without producing any sound. His face had turned pale, and his hands trembled slightly. This man, who was normally steady as a rock in operating rooms, now looked completely rattled. Goldman's managing director appeared confused. "David, are you feeling all right?" This is unexpected," my father managed to say. "What's unexpected?" I asked, maintaining a completely innocent expression. "Do our numbers not meet your expectations?" "No, it's not. The numbers are amazing." "Excellent, then let's continue." I clicked to the next slide and began the most satisfying presentation of my life. Chapter Overview. Horizon Labs was founded in 2021 when I was 22 years old, having just left Stanford. I deliberately emphasized this point, watching my father flinch. Our mission is to revolutionize how enterprises understand and utilize their data. Next slide. Our journey. During our first year, we faced tremendous challenges. Many people told me I was wasting my time, that I should return to school and get a real job. I looked directly at my father again. They said I would never amount to anything. Someone from the Goldman team chuckled. Well, they were certainly wrong about that. Yes, they were, I smiled. But these doubts actually motivated me to work harder and become more determined to prove my point. Growth trajectory. Look at this chart, I pointed to the screen. Our revenue growth has been exponential. First year, $2 million. Second year, $18 million. Third year, $85 million. This year, we're projected to reach $420 million. That's extraordinary growth, Goldman's technology specialist observed, especially considering how young you were when you started. Age has never been a limitation, I replied, if you have the right vision and willingness to execute. Many people underestimate young entrepreneurs, particularly those who choose non-traditional paths. But innovation often emerges from outside established systems. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Every word was a direct reference to that terrible evening 3 days earlier, every statement a refutation of his harsh judgment. Market position. We currently serve over 15,000 enterprise clients, including 47 Fortune 500 companies. Our client retention rate is 98.5%, far above the industry average of 85%. This demonstrates that we're not just providing products, but delivering transformational value. Who are some of your major clients? Goldman's CFO asked. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, Apple, essentially all major technology companies use our platform. We also serve traditional industries. Goldman Sachs is actually one of our clients in the financial sector. This caused a stir in the room. Several Goldman executives exchanged surprised glances. We probably didn't realize that, the managing director said, looking slightly embarrassed. That's quite normal, I explained. We work with so many divisions that it's difficult to keep track. But I'm confident your technology team is very satisfied with our platform. Technology innovation. Our core technology consists of proprietary AI algorithms that can process massive amounts of unstructured data and provide actionable insights. We hold 23 patents with 15 more pending. Our research and development team includes some of the brightest minds from Stanford, MIT, Google, and Facebook. How do you attract such exceptional talent? The technology specialist asked. Vision, I answered simply. People want to work on something that matters, something truly innovative. When you offer that, combined with competitive compensation and equity, the best people will come. I paused, then added, also, I learned early that you must surround yourself with people who believe in you, who see your potential. Those who don't see it, well, you have to move forward without them. My father's face was now visibly pale. Financial performance. This is our most impressive slide, I said, clicking to a detailed financial breakdown. Not just revenue growth, but profit margins. We're not burning cash like typical startups. We're actually profitable, with a 23% profit margin last quarter. That's remarkable, the CFO said. Most companies your age are still losing money. We focus intensely on sustainable growth, I explained. I don't believe in the grow-at-any-cost mentality. I believe in building something solid, something lasting. This philosophy comes from my background. I learned that you can't depend on other people's support. You must build something that stands on its own. Team and leadership. We have 285 employees, including some of the industry's most respected engineers and data scientists. My co-founder and CTO, Marcus Chen, is a former Google senior engineer. Our head of sales came from Oracle. Our CFO previously worked at Goldman Sachs. Speaking of leadership, the managing director said, you're still quite young to be running such a large operation. How do you handle that? Leadership isn't about age, I replied confidently. It's about vision, decision-making, and the ability to inspire others. I've been making difficult decisions since I was 22. I've learned to trust my judgment, even when others question it, especially when others question it. I looked directly at my father when I said this. Future plans. This is why we're considering an IPO, I explained. We have aggressive expansion plans, international markets, new product lines, potential acquisitions. We need access to public markets to fund this growth. What's your timeline for the IPO? The managing director asked. We'd like to go public within the next 6 months, depending on market conditions. Our financials are ready, our legal structure is clean, and we have strong governance. We just need the right banking partner. Well, the managing director said, standing up, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're extremely impressed. This would definitely be one of the year's most significant IPOs. He turned to my father. David, your team has done excellent work in due diligence. My father nodded weakly, still looking shocked. Actually, I said, I have a question about the process. If there are any personal relationships between the banking team and the client, what are the disclosure requirements? Everyone looked confused. I mean, hypothetically, if a banker has prior knowledge of the client or a family connection, how is that typically handled? My father's face went completely white. Well, the managing director said slowly, any potential conflicts of interest would need to be fully disclosed, and depending on the situation, the banker might need to recuse themselves. I see, I said, because I should probably mention that David Kingsley is my father. Complete silence. You could hear a pin drop in that room. I'm sorry, what? The CFO said. Yes, I continued calmly. David is my father. We haven't spoken in a few days since our last family dinner, where he told me I was a college dropout loser who would never amount to anything. All the Goldman bankers turned to stare at my father, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. He told me to save the family some dignity and basically disowned me. So I thought it would be interesting if he could be the banker for my IPO. Jesus Christ, someone muttered under their breath. David, the managing director said, his voice stern, is this true? My father could barely speak. Yes, I made a terrible mistake. I'd say so, I continued, my voice still completely professional. But I don't believe personal relationships should interfere with business decisions. David has an excellent track record in technology IPOs, and Goldman is a top-tier investment bank. I'm confident we can work together professionally. But this is highly irregular, the managing director started. Actually, I interrupted, I think this could be positive for our IPO narrative. Family dynamics always attract media attention. While this isn't technically a family business, this angle might generate additional investor interest. I turned to my father. Don't you think so, David? He nodded weakly. Great, then I think we can move forward with David as lead banker, as long as all proper disclosures are made. The meeting continued for another hour, covering technical details, timeline, and pricing strategy. Throughout it all, my father barely spoke, while I demonstrated complete command of every aspect of my business. For every question, I had the perfect answer. For every concern, I responded with confidence and expertise. When the meeting finally ended, the Goldman executives were clearly impressed. Ms. Kingsley, the managing director said as everyone began packing up, This has been the most impressive presentation I've seen in years. We very much look forward to working with you. Thank you. I also look forward to our partnership. We'll send the detailed timeline and next steps tomorrow morning. Perfect. As people started leaving the conference room, my father approached me hesitantly. Stephanie, can we talk privately? We just did, for 2 hours, very productively, I think. I mean, personally. David, I said, using his first name deliberately. We now have a professional relationship. I prefer to keep things professional. Please, just 5 minutes. I considered for a moment, then nodded. When the room was empty and we were alone, he tried again. Stephanie, Before you say anything, I interrupted, I want you to understand something. 3 days ago, when you humiliated me in front of our entire family, when you called me a failure and threw me out, I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. I was completely wrong. Yes, you were. But you know what the real problem was? It wasn't that you didn't know about my achievements. The problem is that you never asked. 3 years, Dad. 3 years of me building this company, working 18-hour days, creating something extraordinary, and you never once asked what I was actually doing. He looked down at his hands. You saw what you wanted to see, a college dropout daughter who was embarrassing the family. You never bothered to learn about my work, my vision, my progress. You made assumptions based on your own prejudices about what success looks like. If I had known, that's exactly the problem. You shouldn't need to know I'm successful to treat me with basic respect. I'm your daughter. That should be enough. You're right. I know I'm right. For 3 years I've been proving I'm right. Today you saw the results, but the work started long before you decided to pay attention. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Here's what's going to happen, David. We're going to execute a perfect IPO. Your reputation, Goldman's reputation, my company's future, everything depends on it. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. Good, because despite everything, you're still an excellent banker, and I always choose the best people for the job, regardless of personal history. Stephanie, I love you. I always did. Maybe you did, but you didn't respect me. There's a difference. Love without respect is just sentiment. It's empty. I opened the door. We have a meeting next week to discuss pricing strategy. I expect you to be prepared, professional, and excellent. Can you do that? Yes. Then we'll work together just fine. I walked out, leaving him sitting in that empty conference room, processing the fact that his loser daughter had just become the biggest client of his career. Over the following months, the IPO process proceeded flawlessly. David, to his credit, was the consummate professional. He worked harder on my deal than I'd ever seen him work on anything. He studied every aspect of my business, understood every nuance of our technology, and became a genuine expert on our market position. During one of our preparation meetings, he said something that surprised me. Stephanie, I've been working in finance for 25 years, and this is the most impressive company I've ever taken public. Not just financially, but vision, execution, leadership, everything. Thank you, I said simply. No, you don't understand. I realize now what I almost missed. If you hadn't been so determined, if you had listened to me and gone back to school, the world would have lost something extraordinary. It was the first time he had ever acknowledged that my choices might have been right. Our IPO launched on a Tuesday morning in March. Opening price, $85 per share. By the end of the first day, our stock had closed at $127 per share, giving the company a market capitalization of $6.2 billion. I was now, officially, a billionaire. The Forbes article came out the following week, The cover photo showed me standing in my Santa Fe office with desert mountains visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The headline read, "The Revenge of the College Dropout, How 26-year-old Stephanie Kingsley Built the Year's Biggest Tech IPO." The article detailed my entire journey from Stanford dropout to billionaire CEO, including the dramatic family dinner confrontation and the subsequent Goldman Sachs meeting. My phone rang within hours of publication. "Stephanie, it's Dad." "Hi." "I saw the Forbes article. The photo is beautiful, and the article, it told the whole story, didn't it?" "Most of it." "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice quiet. "Not because of the money, not because of the success. I'm proud because you had the courage to believe in yourself when nobody else did, including me." "Thank you. Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you think, sometime, we could have dinner, just us? No business, no family drama, just father and daughter?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Maybe," I said finally, "but not yet. I need time. What you said that night, those words don't just disappear." "I understand. But Dad, next time someone in your life chooses an unconventional path, I'll ask questions first. I'll listen. I won't judge." "Good, because life has many different definitions of success. Your way isn't the only way." "I'm learning that." 6 months later, I was sitting in my Santa Fe home office, watching the desert sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, when a text arrived from my father. "Saw the news about your acquisition of TechFlow. Brilliant strategic move. You're revolutionizing the entire industry. Proud of you." It was the first time he had contacted me about a business achievement without any personal agenda. No request for reconciliation, no attempt to insert himself into my success. Just acknowledgement of the work, respect for what I had built. I texted back, "Thank you, that means a lot," and it did. Not because I needed his approval anymore, but because it showed he was finally seeing me clearly. Not as the failed daughter who had disappointed him, but as a capable leader who had built something remarkable. The best revenge, I realized, isn't proving others wrong. The best revenge is becoming so successful that their opinion stops defining your worth. But sometimes, if you're very fortunate, you also get to watch them grow enough to finally see what they almost missed. And that is absolutely priceless. I closed my laptop and walked out onto the terrace, looking up at stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new ways to build on what I had created. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt complete peace. I had proven everything I needed to prove, not just to my father, but to myself. And that was enough. The peace I felt that evening lasted exactly 8 hours. I woke the next morning to my phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The caller ID showed my mother's number, and something in my gut told me this wasn't a casual check-in call. "Mom?" "Stephanie, honey, I need to tell you something." Her voice was tight with worry. "Your father, he's in the hospital." The words hit me like cold water. Despite everything that had happened between us, despite the months of distance and carefully maintained professional boundaries, he was still my father. "What happened?" "Heart attack. Last night around 11, he was in his study, working late as usual, and he just collapsed. I found him when I went to tell him to come to bed." I was already reaching for clothes with my free hand. "How is he?" "Stable, but..." "Stephanie, it was serious. The doctors say the next 48 hours are critical." She paused, and I could hear her trying not to cry. "He's been asking for you." "I'll be on the next flight." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." 4 hours later, I was walking through the familiar corridors of Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The smell of antiseptic and the sound of monitors beeping brought back childhood memories of visiting my father here when he was still practicing surgery. Back then, he had seemed invincible, moving through these halls like he owned them, respected by everyone, saving lives with steady hands and brilliant decisions. Now he was the patient. I found my mother in the cardiac intensive care unit waiting room, looking smaller than I remembered. When she saw me, her carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, standing to embrace me. "I'm so glad you came." Of course I came. He's my father. She led me to the window overlooking the city, the same view my father had admired countless times when he worked here. The doctor says it was a massive heart attack. If I hadn't found him when I did... She didn't finish the sentence. "Can I see him?" "He's sleeping now, but yes. Room 307. I walked down the hall, my footsteps echoing on polished floors. Through the doorway, I could see my father lying in the hospital bed, connected to machines that monitored every heartbeat, every breath. He looked older than his 62 years, gray and fragile in a way I had never imagined possible. I pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. His breathing was steady but labored, and his face, even in sleep, showed signs of pain. This was the man who had called me a failure, who had publicly humiliated me, who had told me I would never amount to anything. But he was also the man who had taught me to ride a bicycle, who had read me bedtime stories, who had once been so proud of my academic achievements that he bragged about them to anyone who would listen. "I'm here, Dad," I said quietly. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then gradually finding my face. "Stephanie." His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. "Yes, it's me." He tried to sit up, but the effort was too much. "You came." Of course I came. For several minutes, we just looked at each other. Then he said, "I was so afraid I wouldn't get the chance to tell you something." "Dad, you need to rest." "No, please. Let me say this." He took a shallow breath. "That night at dinner, and everything that happened after, I was wrong about everything, not just about your success, but about who you are as a person. You're not just brilliant, Stephanie. You're brave. You're stronger than I ever was." I felt tears starting to form, but I blinked them back. "Dad." When I was your age, I took the safe path. Medical school, residency, exactly what my father expected. I never had the courage to risk everything on my own vision the way you did. I was so afraid of failure that I never even tried to do something truly innovative. He reached for my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "You did what I was too scared to do. You bet everything on yourself, and you won. I should have been proud from the beginning, not just after you proved the world wrong." "You were protecting me the way you thought best," I said. "No, I was protecting myself. I was afraid that if you failed, it would reflect on me. I was more worried about my reputation than your dreams." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "Do you know what I realized last night, right before?" "What?" "I was working on your IPO documents, going over the final numbers, the investor presentations, the media strategy. And I realized I was prouder of that work than anything I'd done in my entire career. Not because of the money or the prestige, but because I was helping my daughter achieve something extraordinary." The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. "Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because if something happens to me, I need you to know this. You are the best thing I ever did. Not your success, not your company, but you, the person you became despite my failures as a father. You weren't a failure as a father. You were just human." He smiled weakly. "Human and stubborn and proud and wrong about so many things." We sat in silence for a while, his hand still holding mine. Finally, he spoke again. Can you forgive me, Stephanie? Not for your mother's sake or for family harmony, but because you want to? I thought about all the pain, all the years of feeling like I had to prove myself worthy of love, all the nights I had wondered if my own father would ever see me as more than a disappointment. Then I thought about the man lying in this hospital bed, vulnerable and afraid, asking for forgiveness, not because he was dying, but because he genuinely understood how deeply he had hurt me. Yes, I said, I can forgive you. I do forgive you. Relief washed over his features. Thank you. But Dad, you have to promise me something. Anything. You have to fight to get better, not for your reputation, not for your career, but because I just got my father back, and I'm not ready to lose him again. He squeezed my hand. I promise. Over the next week, I split my time between the hospital and managing Horizon Labs remotely. My father's recovery was slow but steady, and each day he seemed a little stronger, a little more like himself. But this experience had changed something fundamental between us. During one of our conversations, as he was finally well enough to sit up and eat real food, he asked about my work in a way he never had before. Not about financial performance or market position, but about the actual problems I was solving, the technology I was developing, the vision that drove me forward. Tell me about the AI algorithms, he said. Help me understand what makes them different. For the next hour, I explained the technical innovations that made Horizon Labs unique, the breakthrough moments that had led to our success, the challenges we still faced in scaling our technology. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions, engaging with my ideas in a way that felt completely new. You know, he said when I finished, I spent years thinking I understood what intelligence looked like. Medical school, surgical training, academic achievement. But what you've built, it's a completely different kind of brilliance. It's creative and intuitive and revolutionary. I learned some of that from you, I said. Watching you in surgery when I was young, seeing how you could make split-second decisions with people's lives hanging in the balance. That taught me how to trust my instincts, even when the stakes are impossibly high. I never realized you were paying attention to that. I was always paying attention to you, Dad, even when it seemed like you weren't paying attention to me. On my last day in Chicago, before returning to Santa Fe, my father was well enough to be moved to a regular room. The cardiac monitors were gone, replaced by the normal sounds of a healing hospital ward. As I prepared to leave, he stopped me at the door. Stephanie, I have something to ask you. What is it? Would you consider letting me visit you in Santa Fe? Not for business, not for any agenda, just to see your life, your company, the world you've built. I want to understand it all, not as an investor or a banker, but as your father. I smiled. I'd like that very much. And maybe you could teach me about technology entrepreneurship. I'm thinking about retiring from Goldman in a few years, and I'd love to understand what you do well enough to maybe help other young entrepreneurs who remind me of you. Dad, are you saying you want to become a startup advisor? He laughed, the first truly relaxed laugh I'd heard from him in years. Why not? I spent my whole career being conservative and safe. Maybe it's time to take some risks, learn something new, support the next generation of dreamers who are brave enough to bet everything on an impossible idea. As I flew back to Santa Fe that evening, I thought about how dramatically everything had changed. 6 months ago, my father and I were strangers who happened to share DNA. Now we were beginning to build something neither of us had expected, a real relationship based on mutual respect rather than conditional approval. My phone buzzed with a text message as the plane descended toward Albuquerque. It was from my father. Thank you for giving me a second chance to be the father you deserved. I love you, and I'm proud of you every single day." I typed back, "Thank you for growing up with me, Dad. See you in Santa Fe next month." For the first time in my adult life, I was genuinely excited for my father to visit my world, to show him what I had built not as proof of my worth, but simply as a daughter sharing her life with someone who finally understood how to see it clearly. The best part wasn't that I had forgiven him. The best part was that I no longer needed his approval to feel complete. But having it anyway, that felt like the greatest gift of all. That's the story for today. Hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here. See you next time.